Well, welcome to church this morning, gang. It's good to see everybody out here. I'm sure we'll have our usual stragglers coming in. This usually happens during the Bible study hour. But most of you know Dr. Well. Maybe most of you don't, because a lot of you are new to the church since James has been here last time. But this is Dr. James White. He's what do you call it? Leader, president, something of Alpha, and a director of Alpha and Omega Ministries out of Phoenix, Arizona. Has written dozens of books. How many now?
Just
24, dozens of books, 24 books, dealing with all kinds of apologetics issues, although his second bestseller is on pastoral ministry in hospitals, Grieving. It's a great book. He was a chaplain for a number of years. He serves as an elder at Phoenix Reformed Baptist Church, and he and I have become very good friends through the years now. He was up here yesterday. This will be fun. He came up yesterday.
He didn't come up yesterday.
He came up earlier in the week to do the Mount Evans hill climb on his bike, which he and I and several others did it last year, but this is actually an organized ride, Grand Fondo kind of race style bike ride up to the top, starting in Idaho Springs, up to the top of 14,130 feet. It's a 7,000-foot elevation gain. So if he's a little garbled or falls over or something like that, and then we're going to fatten him up during the potluck, and then he and I and Eric and Forrest are going to go right up to the top of Flagstaff here today. So always great to have James with us to speak on today, the joy of knowing our Creator. I encourage you guys to look at his website. I think you have it all in the information there. Look at his website, listen to his podcast. It's great stuff. So James, take it away, my friend. So it's about 10:15. So I give you 40 minutes.
All right. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
The sermon this morning will specifically be on applying our understanding of the fact that we are creatures made in God's image and the things that are relevant to us today, especially in our society along those lines. What I wanted to do in the Sunday school is to do something very unusual for me. It's sort of cool that you all have become so high-tech since I was here last. I even brought my projector with me. It's sitting in my car, so it's going to get no use whatsoever this trip, but that's all right. Just so that we could do this. But what I wanted to do is, in the Sunday school period, look at just a little bit of why it is that despite the consensus of our Western society that wisdom would demand that we all recognize that we are indeed creatures of a mighty God. There is more evidence of that today than ever before, and it does seem that in Western society our push is to ignoring the greatest amount of evidence you possibly can. For example, over the past couple of weeks our society has been rocked with the Planned Parenthood scandal, and evidently there's like a dozen more of those videos getting ready to come out, by the way. We live in a generation where we have more evidence of the humanity of the unborn child than any generation before us. And yet, we close our eyes and we close our ears against all this evidence. Well, the same thing is true in regards to the fact that we live in a designed universe. And I was Department Fellow in Anatomy and Physiology in college. I was a double major, Bible, biology, minor in Greek. And I fought that battle for many, many years. Even though I went to a Christian college, I was the only person who believed in special creation in the biology department at a Christian college. So this has been something I've dealt with a lot. I don't consider myself an expert or anything like that. I don't go around lecturing on this stuff. There are people who do that. In fact, we're going to be looking at a video that was put together by a gentleman I've come to know just over the past number of months. Probably one of the most brilliant minds I've ever encountered, Dr. Jason Lisle, who is an astrophysicist, but he also is just brilliant in so many other areas. In fact, if you want to write down his last name, Lisle, look him up on YouTube. And, I'm sorry?
He's a CU guy.
He's a CU guy, he is. Look at his video on fractals. He has a fractal video on YouTube that I would highly recommend that you watch. I've been doing fractal art since the 90s. I don't have time to go into that right now, but it's a fascinating video. One of the videos we're looking at comes from Dr. Lisle. So I leave it to the people who have their expertise in those areas, but I just want to share with you some of the information has been extremely confirmatory for me over the years. And the first, really, like I said, I did biology and finished the work for a BS in biology in college, and was at that time really taken with the tremendous complexity of the very form and the function of life that is ours. What's going on in your body right now? You may not be doing much right now. You're just sitting there, and hopefully you're awake and conscious, and your brain is doing a few things. But the reality is that a tremendous number of complex reactions are taking place in your body right now, just to provide you with the basic ability to take in oxygen and to be producing the proteins and the sugars and things that your body runs on a regular basis. That will be greatly accelerated when we go to lunch today, for example. There will be all sorts of processes that will kick in then that hopefully are not going on right now. That biochemical complexity of life, unknown to Charles Darwin, unknown to those generations, they had no earthly idea. They did not know the DNA molecule. They did not know the complexity of the makeup of the cell and so on and so forth. And so these are things that have come along since that time. And a lot of people, maybe took a few basic classes along the way, but just are not aware of how incredibly complex this process is. And it's not complex like a mineral can be complex. We're talking about complexity here that carries information and is clearly designed. And in fact, what I want to show you is actually two videos one of which I showed in a debate with an atheist, a rather well-known atheist, Dan Barker. He's the head of the Freedom from Religion Society up in Madison, Wisconsin. That one right there. Both of these, actually, we'll go with the other one first if we could. Both of these are on the same subject. They're both about 3 minutes long. The first one isn't as detailed as the second, but I figure if you watch the first one, that'll sort of give you a foundation, and maybe the more complex one, the second one, will give you even more understanding. What this is in my opinion, one of those, I just became very echoey there for a second. One of the most amazingly complex and yet so obviously designed mechanisms in all of nature. We cannot create anything like this with the current level of technology that we have. We can send men to the moon, we can send a spacecraft off to photograph Pluto, we can do all sorts of stuff like that, but we cannot do this. And as you watch this, notice the impossibility of denying the intelligent design behind this mechanism. I mean, I've listened to some of the greatest biological minds. They simply cannot discuss this without using terms such as function and design and purpose, even if they turn around at the end and say, isn't it amazing this all just happened to come together? That really would be similar to my pulling out my Droid, you're pulling out your iPhone and saying, this app does this and this app does that. Isn't it amazing? It just happened to come together like this. And yet, the iPhone and that is actually, we can do that. That's big. That's clunky in comparison to this. And this is happening within every mitochondria of every cell in your body right now. And if I had time, I'd show you a 7-minute video I have on photosynthesis. And if you watch how plants do this, if you watch the membrane inside the certain chloroplast within the cell itself, over on the right-hand side in this particular video, you'll see the exact same structure that we have here doing the exact same thing. It's in plants, it's in animals. It is an amazing, amazing thing that this exists, and yet we cannot reproduce this even in this modern age. We just don't have the capacity to work on this level. And notice as well, it requires a knowledge of the most complex levels of biochemistry. You have to understand plasma membranes and ion concentrates, and you have to understand how to attach a phosphate molecule to ADP to make it ATP. And this just happened to happen? It is absolutely beyond rational thought to see these things and just dismiss them as, well, isn't it just wonderful what happened? We don't know how it got here, but la 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 la. That's unfortunately what happens in our society today. So we're going to go real small here, down into the molecular level, and then afterwards go real big. And by looking at these two, what we're seeing, I think, is the very fingerprints of God. And it is truly amazing stuff. So let's take a look at this first one. This is a description. Actually, from what I'm seeing, it's already well into the movie here. So we're going to have to take it back and start there. There we go. All right, let's take a look at this first one. So this next one is the one I showed in my debate with Dan Barker at the University of Illinois a number of years ago, and it's a little bit more complicated than I think it goes into a little bit more detail, but it's the same thing. And I guess if you see it twice, might make it stick a little bit more with you. But let's take a look at this presentation of ATP synthase.
This is a molecular machine that works like a turbine to convert the energy stored in a proton gradient into chemical energy stored in the bond energy of ATP. through an entry open to one side of the membrane and bind to rotor subunits. Only protonated subunits can then rotate into the membrane, away from the static channel assembly. Once the protonated subunits have completed an almost full circle and have returned to the static subunits, an exit channel allows them to leave to the other side of the membrane. In this way, the energy stored in the proton gradient is converted into mechanical rotational energy. The rotational energy is transmitted via a shaft attached to the rotor that penetrates deep into the center of the characteristic lollipop head, the F1 ATPase, which catalyzes the formation of ATP. The F1 ATPase portion of ATP synthase has been crystallized. Shows that the position of the central shaft influences the conformation and arrangement of the surrounding subunits. It is these changes that drive the synthesis of ATP from ADP. In this animated model, different conformational states are lined up as a temporal sequence as they would occur during rotation of the central shaft. Like any enzyme, ATP synthase can work in either direction. If the concentration of ATP is high and the proton gradient low, ATP synthase will run in reverse, hydrolyzing ATP as it pumps protons across the membrane. To show the rotation of the central shaft, a short fluorescent actin filament was experimentally attached to it. Single filaments attached to single F1 ATPases can be visualized in the microscope. When ATP is added, the filament starts spinning, directly demonstrating the mechanical properties of this remarkable molecular machine.
All right, so did you know that that's happening in every cell of your body? Even right now, you have this, and it's just one of so many, incredibly complex and so obviously designed. If you want to see the religious nature of modern day atheism and secularism, listen to Richard Dawkins talk about things like this and talk about how, well, yes, it certainly seems designed. And little children just automatically, when they reach a certain level of maturity, begin to see intentionality and design in things in nature. But we grow out of that. You see, it only seems to be designed. And I look at something like this, and I am just left wondering at the level of self-deception. Romans chapter 1 describes it as katakanton, the suppressing of knowledge, that we actually have when we're dealing with something like this. But anyway, that's at the tiny little molecular level that we've not known until only the past number of decades, the 1950s and beyond. What about the other direction? Well, man has always gazed up the stars. But it wasn't until the past millennia that we began to, well, past really only 500 years, we began to make rudimentary abilities to see beyond what just our physical sight could see. And it really hasn't been until the Hubble telescope that we began to really see into the farthest reaches of our universe. And so what we see down here in the smallest level is we see design. And we can also, when we look out from us, begin to see the power that design, that tiny little thing, also controls this massive, massive universe that is so much larger than anything we could have ever even begun to conceive of. The video that we're going to watch was put together by Jason Lyle, and he did a lot of the computer work on it as well. Like I said, the guy is just brilliant. If you've seen The Created Cosmos before, it's always worth watching again, but it is a tremendous, tremendous discussion of the vastness of the universe that we are living in.
Stardust is visible on our right.
And we're about 7 minutes in there. Hopefully we can back up to the beginning, because that was some of the fun stuff.
The sun.
There we go. There we go. All right.
Extends to distances that we cannot truly comprehend. The space station and other man-made satellites represent only the surface of a celestial ocean. The Apollo astronauts traversed a much greater distance. Traveling at the speed of a bullet, they took 3 days to reach the moon. Distance of 240,000 miles from Earth. This is the farthest that human beings have traveled into space. Yet, the Earth's distance from the Sun is 400 times greater. The Earth orbits at an average distance of 93 million miles from the Sun. But the outer planets orbit at much greater distances. Neptune orbits 30 times farther from the Sun than Earth does. The dwarf worlds Pluto and Eris are even farther away. Their orbits do not lie in the same plane as the planets. The orbits of all the planets could be contained in a cube that is 6 billion miles on a side. Yet, the distance to the stars is far greater. The next nearest star system is Alpha Centauri. How many solar systems would fit between the Sun and Alpha Centauri? The answer is an astonishing 4,278. It is a distance that is almost impossible to imagine. Consists of more than one star. The combined light from these two stars appears as a single star in our night sky. Alpha Centauri A is the larger and brighter of these two stars. It is a glowing orb of hydrogen gas, very similar to the Sun, though slightly larger. Its surface temperature is around 6,000 degrees Celsius, the same as the Sun. and so it has a similar color. Alpha Centauri b is slightly smaller and cooler than the Sun. Alpha Centauri A and B orbit each other every 80 years. A third distant star of this system, called Proxima Centauri, is faintly visible. The constellations look very similar to the way they look from our solar system. This indicates that most bright stars are far more distant than Alpha Centauri. The Big Dipper is a familiar sight, and so is the constellation Cassiopeia, except there is now an extra star in this constellation. That is the Sun. As seen from Alpha Centauri, the Sun is just a bright star. The planets cannot be seen at all from this distance. As we journey back to the solar system, the constellations change only slightly. The Sun is over 100 times larger than Earth in diameter. And while most stars are smaller than this, some of the brighter stars in our night sky are considerably larger. Sirius is the brightest star in our nighttime sky. Sirius is bright because it is relatively nearby, a mere 50 trillion miles away. It is almost twice the diameter of the Sun. The light blue color indicates that Sirius has a surface temperature of around 9,000 degrees Celsius. So, blue stars are considerably hotter than the Sun, whereas red stars are cooler. Pollux is a member of the constellation Gemini. It is a giant star, nearly 10 times larger than the Sun in diameter. The constellation Orion is a familiar sight in our winter sky. It has a number of stars even larger than Pollux. The center star of Orion's belt is called Alnilam. It is a blue supergiant. 25 suns could be lined up across its disk. Blue stars like Alnilam are very luminous. They expend their fuel quickly and cannot last billions of years. So, blue stars remind us that the universe is much younger than is generally claimed. Secular astronomers are forced to assume that stars like Alnilam have spontaneously formed in the recent past. However, star formation is riddled with theoretical problems and has never been observed. Rigel is also a blue supergiant. It stretches nearly 70 suns across. As amazing as this seems, even larger stars have been discovered. Betelgeuse is one of the largest stars in the solar neighborhood. It is a red supergiant, even larger than Rigel. Betelgeuse is roughly 600 times the diameter of the Sun. If Betelgeuse were placed at the center of our solar system, we would be inside it. Betelgeuse would completely engulf the inner planets. The size of Betelgeuse pales in comparison to its distance from our planet. Astronomers often use the term light year when referring to stellar distances. A light year is a measure of distance, not time. 1 light year is roughly 6 trillion miles. Betelgeuse is over 400 light years away, or 2,400 trillion miles. Yet, it's one of the nearest of Orion's bright stars. Alnilam lies over 1,000 light years away. Now we will travel much deeper into space, several hundred light years toward Orion's belt. On our journey, we get a sense of the astonishing distance to these stars. The Hyades star cluster is visible on our right. We pass Bellatrix, the nearest of Orion's bright stars. Next up, Betelgeuse slowly drifts across the sea. pick up speed, we pass by Rigel and Safe. Finally, we reach the nearest stars of Orion's belt. We have traveled a distance of 5 million billion miles into space. We glance back in the direction of the solar system. It is located here. However, the sun could not be seen from this distance without a telescope. It is a humbling experience to think of our entire solar system reduced to an invisible point. The constellations are completely unrecognizable from this distance. Although many of the same stars are visible, they no longer connect in a way that makes sense. Since we define the constellations as seen from our solar system, they point the way home. And as we travel back to the sun, they return to their familiar shapes. We now know that our sun is not the only system with planets. Astronomers have detected one or more planets around each one of the indicated stars. Several hundred extrasolar planets are now known to exist, and it seems likely that countless more remain undetected in the depths of space. In most cases, the planet itself cannot be seen directly. It is lost in the powerful glare of its host star. However, astronomers are able to measure the slight wobble the planet gravitationally induces on its star. This technique allows us to estimate the orbital period and minimum mass of the planet. In some rare cases, the planet passes directly in front of its star, as seen from Earth. The star V376 Pegasi has a planet that crosses its disk precisely every 3.52 days. Astronomers can measure the drop in the star's brightness and determine the size of the planet. Of course, this technique is only possible for the handful of star systems that are nearly edge-on relative to us. This planet is larger than Jupiter, but it orbits 20 times closer to its star than Earth orbits the Sun. This so-called hot Jupiter is a serious problem for secular models of planet formation. These scenarios had predicted that gas giants can only form far away from their parent star. Yet the vast majority of extrasolar planets so far detected are hot Jupiters. It's a difficult problem for secular notions, but not for biblical creation. Such diversity is what we would expect from the biblical God. This is the Upsilon Andromedae system. It has 3 known planets. All 3 are larger than Jupiter and orbit remarkably close to their star. The innermost planet is estimated to be 20 times larger than Earth in diameter. Its proximity to the star makes its temperature over 1100 degrees Celsius. Since current technology is not able to observe these worlds directly, we can only speculate what they look like. But we can be certain that their richness declares the majesty of their maker. In addition to stars and planets, the universe contains nebulae. A nebula is a cloud of hydrogen and helium gas spread over a vast region of space. Many nebulae are very hot and give off light. They are some of the most colorful objects in the cosmos. Some nebulae are relatively small, produced by the ejected gas of a single star. These are called planetary nebulae because many of them are round and appear like an out-of-focus planet. Planetary nebulae are quite common. Other nebulae are much larger, spanning many light years. These amazing creations can rightly be called the artwork of God. Our summer evening sky contains a number of other objects called globular clusters. They are too faint to be detected with the unaided eye, but are easily seen in binoculars or a small telescope. The globular cluster M4 is found just to the right of the red star Antares. Through binoculars, M4 appears as a faint, fuzzy blur. However, a telescope reveals that this blur is the combined light of thousands of stars. This is the most distant object we've visited so far. M4 is 7,000 light years away from Earth. That's 40 billion miles. This globular cluster contains roughly 100,000 stars, yet it is only 50 light years across. This incredibly dense star field would be a wonderful sight. In addition to these countless stars, M4 also contains a strange object called a pulsar. It is thought to be the crushed core of an exploded star. Powerful beams of radiation emanate from the star's magnetic poles. When a beam sweeps past our field of view, we perceive a bright flash. However, if our solar system were not in the path of the radiation beams, we would not detect these pulses. By measuring the precise timing of these pulses, astronomers have learned that this pulsar is orbited by a planet. As with all extrasolar planets, we can only guess how this planet may appear. The view from this world must be absolutely breathtaking. On the other hand, it would be difficult to see beyond this bright star field. If we lived in a globular star cluster, we might never know about the vast universe beyond. M4 is merely one of more than 100 globular clusters that belong to our galaxy. This is our galaxy, the Milky Way. It spans 80,000 light years across and contains more than 100 billion stars. The Milky Way is a spiral galaxy. The brighter stars are concentrated into arms that wrap around the disk. Since our solar system is within this disk, we see the Milky Way as a cloudy band in our night sky. No human being or spacecraft has seen our galaxy from the outside, as shown here. It is difficult to grasp just how large our galaxy is. Our solar system is located here. In fact, with the exception of M4, all the stars and planets we visited are within this little ring. The Milky Way is a remarkable demonstration of God's power. But what's even more amazing is that our galaxy is merely one of billions. Every one of these faint clouds is an entire galaxy. When we pan upward, we see a strange band where galaxies seem to be missing. This is called the zone of avoidance and is aligned with the disk of our galaxy. Although many galaxies are undoubtedly in this region, gas and dust in our own galaxy prevent us from seeing them. Further up, we see a massive grouping of galaxies called the Virgo cluster. It contains over 2,000 galaxies and is 50 million light years away from Earth. At the heart of the Virgo cluster lies the giant elliptical galaxy M87, which has over 1 trillion stars. Galaxies come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Each one is a glorious demonstration of God's limitless power. Critics of the Bible have suggested that it is impossible for the light from these galaxies to reach Earth in only 6,000 years. They claim that these galaxies prove the universe is billions of years old. But in fact, there are several different ways to get light to travel these distances in a short period of time. These include gravitational time dilation, alternate synchrony conventions, and others. In fact, spiral galaxies are a serious problem for the notion of billions of years. Their spiral arms contain vast numbers of blue stars, which cannot last billions of years. Also, spiral galaxies rotate differentially, meaning the inner portions rotate faster than the outer portions. So the spiral arms cannot last billions of years. They would be twisted beyond recognition, but it's not a problem for the biblical timescale. From the Virgo cluster, our entire galaxy appears as a grain of portion of the cosmos. Beyond this distance, astronomers have cataloged only certain regions of the visible universe. At last, we begin to see the large-scale structure of the universe. The galaxies are organized into a complete tapestry of strings and voids. For clarity, only a few selected regions are shown here. This is the universe, or at least as much of it as our present understanding makes possible. Just imagine the power involved as all these galaxies leapt into existence at God's command. And yet the Bible describes the creation of all this with the single phrase, He made the stars also. The psalmist writes, when I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him? Now travel back home by zooming in by a factor of 10 every 4 seconds. The little circle is 10 times smaller than the large one. Every time we see a new circle, we've traveled 90% of the remaining distance home. The strings and voids of galaxies seem to disappear as we approach home. We plunge into the nearest several dozen galaxies called the local group. The Milky Way becomes visible at last. We're approaching our galaxy from almost directly above. We enter the Milky Way between 2 of the spiral arms. We can now see that these arms are comprised of billions of stars. As we approach our solar system, the stars slow down and converge to their familiar positions. We pause briefly to note that we are now able to recognize the constellations. Orion is visible on our left. The sun is dead ahead, but from this distance it appears as a faint star. At last we reach the solar system. The orbits of the outer planets are highlighted. We can now see the orbits of the inner planets, but the Earth itself is still invisible from this distance. The Earth may seem an insignificant speck compared to all that God created, yet this tiny world is where God placed the crowning jewels of His creation. Of all that the Lord created, human beings alone have the privilege of being made in God's own image. And though we have rebelled against our Creator, He's paid the penalty for our treason. It was on this small planet where the Creator of the universe became a man and died our death. He then rose again and has offered forgiveness for all who call upon His name. It is fitting that we should honor God for who He is and for what He has done.
Well, that's big. It is truly amazing to think of the grandeur of the scale that is represented by material that we just saw there. It's very, very well done. Presentation as well. I hope that's useful to you. It's hard for us to hold together. We can't even imagine the scale of that. And then it's difficult for us to imagine the scale going the other direction. And yet to see the complexity of design on the small scale and the power on the large scale, it truly is something that should cause any of us to be extremely humble in the face of such information. So I just wanted to sort of give you some of that. It's sort of a background to what we'll be looking at in the service this morning. But you can find this material, of course, on the web. It's still out there. Hopefully it will remain out there. Who knows with what's going on in our world these days. But a lot more of that kind of stuff out there. Just want to sort of throw that out to you, give you some background. Hopefully it will be more helpful to you in the service to come as we make application. All right? So let's close our time with a word of prayer. Father, we do thank you for the beauty of the creation around us and for its immensity, its complexity. Lord, we confess that there's much we do not know. There's much we do not understand. We are but creatures of your hand, and yet you have revealed yourself to us.
We thank you for the fact that you have made us in your image, that we are not just animals that are drifting through an endless sea of purposelessness, but instead you have made us, we have been called, and we have been given a purpose. We thank you for that. We ask that you would be with us in the services to come, that you would be honored and glorified in all that takes place. We pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. All right, friends. We have about 10 to 15 minutes before the service starts. There's coffee and refreshments back in the fellowship hall. Feel free to greet Dr. White and say hello. Looks like we got some friends visiting here. But enjoy the next 10 or 15 minutes, then come back on in. Okay? Thank you, sir.